I'm Tim Gray from Variety. Thank you for coming today to the screening, and thank you for staying for the Q&A. That was an excellent decision, because there are three people here, incredibly talented, and they're all like really, really good people, and I don't say that about everybody in town. The first is the director. His credits include Girl Interrupted and Walk the Line, James Mangold. Amazing actor Hugh Jackman. And the producer, Hutch Parker. And thank you three for coming, and congratulations on the film, which is, it's a great film, and as you know, it's a big success. But okay, what I want to know is, I'm assuming the X-Men films, the Wolverine films, have been successful, so I'm assuming Marvel and Fox were eager to make another one. But this one is like, seems to be the end of the line for Wolverine. It's R-rated, and it's a whole different tone. I mean, did those three things come as like a package, or did one of them lead to the other?
Oh, I don't think it, the evolution was a little different, which was more, I think, at least from where I sit, and I think from where Hugh sits, that we just talked about whether we were going to do another one, and Hugh contemplated whether he wanted to do another one, and I think that for me, I think Hugh can speak to his own struggle with what to do, but my own feeling was that while I had a great time making the Wolverine with him, and I'm really proud of the movie, I also felt like I didn't want to just do that again. And what that to me meant was making a kind of a movie that felt as much about fulfilling a kind of comic book adaptation, more about that than being my film or a kind of personal film. So, because what I really wanted to do, and in fact, in many ways, it's a side thing, but after finishing Wolverine, I set about making a more personal film, and that film fell apart, and then this movie came in as we were working on it. And I think, for me, the thing was I just didn't want to do another, I do think this lines up with where you were feeling. It's like, we've all gotten used to what these things, these movies mean, as commodities, as sales tools for toys, as ways to move Happy Meals, as ways for people to argue online about canon and whether we've broken it, or why there's a different actor in this role, and that whole thing, I'm over it. Meaning, to me, because it doesn't work for fans. Even the fans saying it, I don't think it actually rewards them, in the sense that they end up getting the same movie over and over again, because in a way, they keep asking for the same movie over and over again. And so the short answer is, I was only going to do it if we could figure out a way to do something different. And I think Hugh and I were kind of connected as a hip in that sense.
Yeah, well, we talked about it not long after, maybe even during while we were shooting. We were talking about the possibility of making a Wolverine movie like this, with that Unforgiven tone, or the Wrestler, that kind of real study of the consequences of violence, what the humanity of this character would really look like in a serious film. And actually, to date back even prior to that, Hutch, who at the time was a bigwig at Fox, back when we were doing the first Wolverine movie, I remember sitting in that room and we were looking at a much smaller, for the first Wolverine movie, a smaller sort of personal story about two brothers that, I may be speaking out of turn here, but this is how I've remembered it. Other people in the studio, we all of a sudden, out of nowhere, were on some list as the most anticipated movie of the following year. And I think everyone was surprised and went, oh, and so, well, let's put it on this big date and let's add all this to it. And so we sort of grew almost into another X-Men movie. You throw in the writer's strike in the middle of all that, and that's not always a great recipe. So this idea of doing that personal film had been there. I remember Jim and I talking about what it would be, and not long after that, I had this just a real gut feeling that this should be the last, which kind of gave it an urgency and excitement for me once we had this, and I'll be honest, nervousness about making it as good as it could be. So that was sort of, the R-rated thing came in later, didn't it?
Well, the R-rated thing was important to me because I thought we could get the studio to agree to it, so it wasn't like a pipe dream, partly because of the success of Deadpool and a few other movies, but that actually at the time we were convincing them Deadpool hadn't come out yet, but they kind of knew it was going to do well, and but that for me the part of the rating that was important is harder to describe, which is that in the world in which movies are rated before, or you have a kind of rating you're headed for before you even make the film. If you're making a PG film, the studio assumes it's a 4-box movie and it's going to play to 9-year-olds and 10-year-olds and 11-year-olds as well as 30 and 40-year-olds. So the script is evaluated as a 4-box script, and the story is evaluated how it's going to play to everybody. When you're making a rated R movie, you're not doing that. You're not making a movie for people really under 15 or 16 years of age. So it changes. You know, there's a great early scene between Hugh and Patrick Stewart in the movie in the tank. Their first scene together. I think it must be 7.5, 8 minutes long. 2-person scene just talking about life. And that scene wouldn't survive if the movie wasn't rated R. I mean, there's other things that happen when a movie is rated R. You'd have upcut the movie for the attention span of 12-year-olds before a scene like that would exist. And it's just the reality. So it's kind of so it's not just kind of the presence of sexual references or salty language or violence. With it comes a kind of assumption that the movie is for grown-ups and allows you to explore these characters and these ideas through a prism that is just a little less attention deficit theater. And that's a big difference, you know, and that changes everything from the ground up.
Well, I mean, because the movie has been so successful critically and financially, in retrospect, it seems like every decision was easy and inevitable. But, I mean, in truth, this is really a very daring film. So after you got the green light, realized this is happening, was there ever a moment of panic, like, oh my God?
We had a lot of moments. The amazing thing about this movie was the studio showed a tremendous amount of faith, actually. There wasn't a lot of battles with them at all. But an example of the faith would be that Scott Frank and I didn't really get to the end of the script in any version that was anything reflecting what you've seen until like February of 2016, and we were shooting just a few months later. So the movie, the studio put a tremendous amount of faith that we'd figure it out, and so from that came a kind of laboratory of creativity of all the folks here with me and many others, and that was the scariest part, was kind of just believing you were going to close the circle, and a lot of that is working with friends. Also, a lot of that is the faith you have working with people who are not strangers, and you all kind of just believe and go down the hill together.
I had a meeting with Emma Watts and Steve Asbell at Fox, and I asked them to come and meet me at a hotel in Beverly Hills, symbolically, deliberately taking them out of the studio setting. I didn't want to meet in their office, because for me, the whole atmosphere or feeling behind the film was, this is not a studio movie, this is not a genre movie, this is not a superhero movie, this is almost like an independent movie with a much bigger budget. And they came, and Jim and I talked, I had the idea, and literally within 2 minutes, Emma and Steve were like, let's go. I was like, you sure? They were like, yeah, let's go. I think, I'm glad you mentioned it, Tim, because it does take great courage, particularly when you have a property which I'm sure in some people's heads is a no-brainer, will make this amount of money if you do it that way. But they've done 8 before, so just do another one. And they risked making less. They risked a lot. And the other thing is, the thing I was so excited about having Jim is, I've worked with Jim since Kate and Leopold, but I've watched all these movies, and I know all you have. He's a writer and a director, and he happens to be one of the biggest Hollywood directors out there, and every studio's trying to get him, but in his heart, he's a writer, director, independent filmmaker. Am I wrong in saying that? I would say
very nice to say.
In his core. So it was thrilling to give Jim a blank canvas We weren't basing it off a particular comic book. It wasn't the Japan story. It wasn't anything. There was no existing script like there was on the Japan movie when Jim came on. So this was fresh and really the movie that you see up there. And I am forever, trust me, and annoyingly grateful. He's actually said, "Will you stop thanking me?" Enough for it. But I am forever grateful for Jim because I was so nervous to make it as good as it could possibly be. And it's way better than I could have imagined because of this man.
It's important to spend a little bit more time on that because in terms of the risk tolerance, this was a risky and anxiety-provoking venture, at least in as much as, you know, and I'll speak from a studio point of view, you had a lot of evidence that speaks to the fact it should be PG-13, that we need these movies to build on themselves. To everybody's credit, over in Building 88, they were seeing the fruits of taking some chances with films, and this is obviously, you know, pre some of their big successes, but they did The Martian, and they'd done some interesting films. But a lot of the reason they were as confident, apart from frankly having you back in a role that is so iconic, is Jim. Is that Jim is a filmmaker and as a storyteller. Not only, I think he's one of the best working today, you know, in the top few that I could name, and has consistently been that way. But it's not just what goes on the screen, it's also the way in which he manages all those of us who are working with him, but as importantly, the studio. And part of what you long for as a studio executive is you want to take creative risk, you want to take chances, but you are somewhat, it's a vulnerable place to be when you're taking on a project and saying, okay, now I'm going to give you X amount of dollars and really hope that you go do everything you promised and said you would, and that what's going to come back is going to reflect that intention. And with Jim, you know, doing something like this, R-rated, so character-based, really a drama, not an action movie, a drama. Its engine is dramatic in emotion. Jim gives tremendous confidence that he can go and execute that and give you something special. He's done it repeatedly. So unlike, I witnessed and was part of far more movies where there was far more anxiety, and yet they were much safer bets than what we experienced together. And I think a lot of it really does lie with the man we like to shower praise on and embarrass.
Let's keep talking about him to see if we can make him blush.
I have to go to the job.
No, because you know, I mean, you do have a reputation of being a good director, but also being an actor's director. So, like the scenes with you and Patrick Stewart, I mean, like the early scene, the one in the upstairs bedroom where the two of you join, and the scene with you and Dafne Keen, the little girl, are basically the heart of the film. Do you talk about those scenes a lot before you do them, or do you do a lot of takes? I mean, how is he getting these results from actors?
Jim is we would do some rehearsal, not over rehearsed, but we would definitely rehearse things. I know for me, from the 3 movies I've done, I'm very obviously, like most actors, critical of my own work, but some of the better stuff that I've liked has been with Jim. Jim came in to direct me as Wolverine. I'd done 7 movies playing this character, so you'd be forgiven for thinking, you might go, you do your thing, you know. But actually, the person who was toughest on me playing the role as though I had never played it before was Jim, and constantly keeping me grounded. I think the inconsistency in staying on me sometimes, because you guys know me, naturally I'm more upbeat, and keeping me down, keeping me grounded, keeping me focused, keeping me true to that character. Jim is tough, and he will be tough on me. And he will also create an environment that is free for actors to play, to explore, to own that character. And the way I saw him particularly direct Dafne. Now, Dafne is a special, you guys all know that. She's an extraordinary actor, but this is her first film. And that's a huge thing to step onto as an 11-year-old when she came. And he managed to create an atmosphere for her that it was so much fun, it was easy, and it was extraordinary to watch that. Even I remember the day we were shooting the scene in the car when she speaks for the first time. So you're 90 minutes into a movie and your 11-year-old hasn't said a word, and all of a sudden she's spewing out Spanish, and you have a 4-minute speaking scene, you know. And we'd auditioned on that scene, but you just never know what's going to happen on the day. It was probably 120 degrees in the car, and you know, Jim was just phenomenal. I think we were done by lunchtime on that day. It was.
She was on fire.
She was on fire, but in the way you did that, and also just the way with Patrick, I think Jim is that perfect thing for me. I think most actors like to be directed when they trust the director. Actually, there's nothing greater than to go on set and to play. Like even a character you've done for 17 years, go, I'm just going to play. Like maybe I'll go this way. And when you know you've got someone who's going to go, come back here. Oh yeah, actually go that way. That's what it's like working with Jim. It's this perfect mixture of discipline with freedom.
But also, I mean, as you know better than anybody, I mean, Logan and Wolverine is very angry and keeps people at a distance. Is that hard? Does that ever get under your skin when you're living with that character for week after week?
I'm not. I pity my family if I do. No, but I remember shooting the scene where my character dies, and it makes me a little. Every time I think about it, I get a little emotional about not the dramatics of it. But when we were shooting it, we were shooting up at 9,000 feet, and yeah, and there was constant lightning every 5 seconds. Like, and the rule on set is if there's any lightning strike within 3 miles of set, you have to shut down for half an hour. So we were constantly shutting down, and we were chasing weather. So we get to that, and all of a sudden it opened up, and I remember, I don't think we were meant to be shooting the scene then, but we said, let's go and do it now. That's my memory of it. So all of a sudden we're there, and we're shooting it. And of course, yes, it's the death of Wolverine, but you saw how amazing Dafne was in that scene. And you have to believe that this girl, all of a sudden, is kind of there with her father. And she has tears streaming down. Like, she was extraordinary in that scene. And we did have 2 cameras on it, and then Jim came around to shoot me, and we shot it. And I remember thinking, okay, we're good. And I could see everyone around racing and chasing weather, reading lightning monitors and all that. And I'll never forget, Jim came up to me and goes, well, I'm just going to set the camera in a slightly different position, but really, I just want to give you a bit of space. It was probably a half hour. I don't know if it's in the movie or not, but I just never forget the generosity of my friend saying, I kind of get this as a big moment for you, and I don't want you to feel rushed. I want you to remember, not the result, not just you as a man playing a role for 17 years, breathe and be, and don't worry about anything. And that was one of the most generous things I've ever experienced.
If I might say, that's really kind. You guys are both very kind. But a couple things I might say about my own theory about, because I have, it's up to other people to think about the results, but I've enjoyed my relationship with actors on all my films. And of course, you was a great friend of mine, and that's even different or more transcendent than just being an actor in my films. But one thing I strive toward, and if there's other filmmakers or young filmmakers or people, and even actors in the audience that is this at all interesting to, is that we do tend to draw into our camps, and that particularly the filmmaking side, that we tend to be more happy staying up late at night with our DP, watching Apocalypse Now and talking about Storaro shots, that we are staying up late with our actors talking about the script. Because one seems to be filled with fear for a lot of filmmakers, and one thing seems to be orgasmically fun for some filmmakers. And I don't know why they're not scared that the DP is going to run away with the movie with them the same way they might fear the actor is. But that the answer to me is that you should, I try to work to make, I don't know if you can call it a friendship with everyone, but some kind of connection with everyone before you end up on the set together. To me, that's much more important than rehearsal, is that you know each other. You know, I'm working on another film right now, and I was reading actors all day until I got here. And like one of the things I do, just on another side, is I read them. I don't. There isn't some. There's a casting director reading. I'm playing whoever else is in the scene, and it's not necessarily good. But it is. But what I'm trying to do at that moment is, from the moment, especially if it's someone who might not be reading so much anymore, or might have gotten somewhere and feels like they're past that, is to say, let's both put it out on the line. Meaning, I'll look bad, you look bad, or whatever it is. That there's a sense that I'm not sitting here with my cell phone watching from the couch in the corner while you deal with this. That I'm in here with you, and that is the biggest thing I think I try to share with my players and my crew, is the sense that I'm in it with you. I'm not in a trailer, I'm here. And that is, and I think that does more, actually, than almost anything, this feeling, just trust and connection and understanding each other's humanity a little bit.
But no, talk about your relationship with the other actors on the set, because I mean, again, Logan is standoffish from them, but I am told you're not.
And I'm not. I'm not really, but one of the things I found difficult when I first came. So I came to America, and I was in a massive, big movie. I mean, I'd worked on a $2 million movie, so maybe 3 of those back in Australia. There's no stand-ins. You bring your own lunch, can I have a chair? Yeah, fucking get your own. So it's a very different sort of atmosphere, and the Mr. Jackman, or not that anyone says don't look you in the eye, but there's a little bit of an unspoken, he's an actor, let him do his thing. If he invites conversation, fine, but don't invade. And it weirdly used to make me feel self-conscious. Like, I would prefer, as you said, being with a director who's in there with you. I would prefer a director say, man, I'm just not buying it, I'm not believing it. I go, yeah, let's go again, rather than something polite. I prefer when people are giving each other shit, or like a little bit of banter on set. I like that feeling of we're all in it together. Maybe it's a theatre background. This is our collective thing. There is no star and then everyone else. It's not, this is your shot, and then we'll do the reverse and it's my shot. I just even hate that language. It's all of ours, and I want the boom operator, everyone into it. And so I think I do make an effort to really try and break down any of those barriers. This man does that. He does that completely. He'll give shit to everybody, literally. I'm surprised Timmy hasn't given you shit already.
It's coming.
Later.
So, and it makes me feel comfortable. And then I think, that connection is everything. Even if it means 5 minutes later you're literally slicing them in half with claws, it's better to have that connection.
Yeah. But no, you have studied acting.
Yeah, a little bit.
Because I know in the end credits, among the last, is the filmmakers wish to thank, and there's Alexander McKendrick. Can you tell him quickly about what he told you about directors?
Well, I had been making films since I was like 12 with my dad's Super 8 camera. And I had a double system, editing system in my attic by the time I was in high school. I was a total geek and was building miniatures, doing animated films, and I came out to California when I was 17, and I went to Cal Arts. And I didn't really know why I picked the school. It had a really cool catalog, but it looked like fame, but I realized I had been smart, because when I arrived there was this wonderful teacher there, Alexander McKendrick, who became almost like a dad to me for the next 4 years, and was he directed Man in the White Suit, The Lady Killers, the original one, the Sweet Smell of Success, and a phenomenal list of movies. If you haven't seen them, you should watch them. But he was also a kind of amazing teacher, because he had been hit with emphysema fairly early in life, and he had to stop directing. And so you had kind of a director in the full flower of their abilities landing in this small school and sharing. And one of the things, to get to what Tim was referring to, was after 2 years with him, I was his teaching assistant at this point. He was like, "You've absorbed everything you're going to absorb from me. Yeah, I've got nothing left." And he reminded you of, if those of you remember the TV series The Paper Chase, and John Houseman's character. He was very imperious, yet kind of loving at the same time. And but he suggested to me, actually forcefully, that he wouldn't speak to me in my third year, and that he wanted me to apply to the theater school as an actor and leave the film school and not think about lenses and cameras and film stocks and action sequences or miniatures for at least a year, and just and I did it. And it was the best year, honestly, of my life. I had a great time. I was tumbling, fight, choreography, voice, movement, studio work, theater, everything, and was doing and plays at night. And Don Cheadle was in my acting studio, and it was an incredible experience. And the kind of experience which is a kind of gift Sandy gave me, which was just, whenever there's a class like acting for directors, they basically, most of them, because I've been in film schools and I've seen these classes, they tend to scare the shit out of the directors about actors. Like, they're a very special breed that requires a certain language, and don't ever say. And some of it comes from wisdom, but it's wisdom if you feel it. Like if you felt it yourself, it doesn't become this bad tour guide book in this strange land where you should never use these words, and it becomes just organic, that it's like about your energy and negativity or goals or having actions or directions to pursue in a scene, except other than do it again or better or be funnier or whatever. And that's how frustrating that is as a player, and that coming to understand that and understand it from the inside a little bit was a huge. It was also I had a lot of fun doing it. So, as Hugh knows, I sing bad show tunes all the time. Good show tunes, badly sung.
But no, you were talking about the last scene of the film. Was that the last scene you shot on the film?
No.
Yeah.
No.
So talk about the last day of filming, because when you entered into the film, you knew this was going to be, saying goodbye. But what was it like on the last day?
Really bad at goodbyes. I'm bad, like when you do you've done a show for a year on Broadway, and the last show, I don't like walking in, people are already crying and hugging each other. I'm like, I just don't like it. Maybe it's some wound in me, but I've never liked it. So you put 17 years on that, and I go into that last day, and it was a very bitsy piecey day. I remember it was like a green screen.
All the last pieces we owed on the film.
It just, I did start to cry at one point. You and Simon gave me a very personal gift. It was beautifully thought out, and I think I cried when I hugged you, and then I kind of went around, but I generally feel uncomfortable with it. I'm just bad with the goodbyes, which is weird for our business, because that's literally all you do. You say hello, have a sex scene, and say goodbye, really. That's kind of how it feels. But I've never really liked that. I've tried to deny it. And honestly, Tim, it didn't feel like it was over until Berlin. We premiered at the Berlin Film Festival, and I used to say, not to Jim, but to people, what are you doing with the last one? Which comic book is it? And I said, look, think Unforgiven, maybe The Wrestler, but think of a movie that could premiere like at a Berlin Film Festival, right? Because in my head, that was just this European, more art house. So we get the call saying, oh, by the way, we're premiering at the Berlin Film Festival. I was like, shit, careful what you wish for. But when we went there, I was doing press during the day. And as journalists said, I'm very excited to see your film tonight. I was at the bus stop and someone was making conversation. What do you do? And I told them. I said, I'm interviewing Hugh Jackman with this. And the guy at the bus stop was like, why are they bringing these superhero movies to Berlin? This is a travesty. So I went in that night to the premiere going, I don't know what's going to happen here. I also had not seen the film finished, and I was sitting next to Patrick Stewart and Jim, and Dafne was there with her parents and Hutch, and I probably have never been more nervous in my life, because it's done. and I hadn't seen it finished. And when the shot which Jim came up with, which I cried when I read it, but when I see it on screen, it gets me every time when the cross turns into an X, like the way it's shot. Anyway, I went. That was in a way like the last day for me. That's how much the movie meant to me, I suppose. I knew for the rest of my life I was going to live with it. And that's why I, honestly, like in that moment, I was like, for 17 years, I'd felt there was a version of this character with the humanity that we just hadn't got to. It was like, yes, with Doug, but there was something down there. And when I saw it in that felt like the last day. So, long answer, sorry.
It was a good answer. And this is an unfair question, but okay, 5 years from now, somebody comes to you and says, what about reviving Wolverine? I mean, possible?
I feel really strongly like I was, and trust me, because Michelle is here somewhere, is my publicist. Like before I actually announced it was my last one, I announced it before we filmed. She wouldn't let me announce it. She'd asked me 7 times over about 3 months. She said, I'm not announcing it, I'm going to ask you. And every time I was like, no. It was something in my gut that just felt this was right. And I know Australians are not really known for leaving the party early, but it just feels like the right time to leave the party. So I can't see that happening. It just feels right to me.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a great film. It's a great. I mean, seriously, congratulations to all of you. But how we doing? Okay. Do we have any questions? Yeah.
How did you cast Dafne? Great question.
I don't know if you heard. They want to know how they cast Dafne.
Well, the brief of who we were looking for was so specific by the time we finished the script, which was, between 10 and 12 Spanish-speaking actress who can handle the physicality, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's suddenly the number of submissions you're going to get are greatly reduced, at least credible ones. And one day I got this iPhone video from Europe that Daphne's dad had made of her in their house. They're climbing around their bookshelves and then doing a couple of the dialogue pieces. You've been around, there's like this sense you have when you're with an actor with a kind of innate built-in sense. I don't know how to describe it, but it's this ability, well, I guess I do know how to describe it. It's like the way they carve the hill, if you're a skier, the way they can turn, they don't just play the text straight through. You're watching, there's this very sophisticated thing you have and watching it on an 11-year-old I knew she could do it, meaning it was just this, because it's the thing that's hardest to get, is to not follow the scene, but to kind of cross-grain the scene. And she was doing that. She was finding humor where you didn't expect it. She was making these pin-tight turns, and that is a kind of thing that is not teachable per se. I knew my greatest worry when I saw that tape that morning was getting them to okay her, because I knew they would have liked, teenage, more kind of sexified teeny bopper X-23, and they were still not even settled. Does she really have to speak Spanish and all of that? And all of it was an effort to kind of find someone who was authentic, who felt like, other models for our movie were, even Paper Moon, the authenticity of Tatum O'Neal in that movie, the kind of dry, real sense of a lot of 70s movies I grew up with, Bad News Bears, those are real kids. Not these shiny cherubs we see in movies today. There's like, where are the kids that look like mine? And that was my goal here, was to confront Hugh's character with something unruly and dynamic and as difficult as his character, and to avoid cute at almost all costs. And she did all of that.
I had bruises the next day. Did I show you?
Oh, after the audition,
The
yeah.
audition, because they're punching me in the arm and that's over, and I literally bruises. I'm an 11-year-old. Yeah. And I remember saying to you, Jim, remember when Dafne walked out the room, I was like, I can't tell if she wants the job or not. Like, she had this real rock star sort of quality. Obviously, she wanted it, but she had this kind of, yeah, you know what? I'm not sure if I want it. And I was like,
That's the best way to walk into any audition. by the way.
totally. Everybody knows that, but to do it, that's another whole thing.
Anything else you want to add before we wrap up? I mean, seriously, this is great work for all of you guys. And just tell your friends it's not a superhero movie if they're resisting it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, but again, thank you all, and thanks to the three of you. Thanks for the film.
Thank you, Tim.